I've often talked about how I think that the 2016 edgelord era of the internet, while honestly being one of my favorite and most nostalgic eras of the internet, did unironically have some pretty negative outcomes in the general cultural dispositions of the people on the internet. I found consistently over like the last few years that the sort of edgy humor that was started in those days of like Filthy Frank, iDubbbz's, and Max Mofo, back when that trio were like at their peak and they were doing their shit together, I feel like that sort of lovely time, at least for me, has had some somewhat negative outcomes in hindsight when it just in regards to people's attitudes online, especially when it comes to anything political. And we'll get to that in just a moment. Personally, I think that the closest content you can get today to what Filthy Frank, Max Mofo, and iDubbbz's did back in the good days, I think, well, it feels inferior to me, doesn't it? When you watch like modern day edgy edgelord like gross out YouTubers, like does it really hit the same as Filthy Frank? I feel like the closest thing to Filthy Frank we have now would have to be like Two Mad's videos. And I mean, Two Mad's videos are funny and everything, but and they do the gross out humor, they do the lol random edgy sort of like insanity type meme, you know, but it doesn't feel the same. I love Two Mad, but it does feel different. It feels like edgy humor online has evolved. And ironically enough, that evolution feels like it's come along with an evolution in the way that memes on the internet are spread. I'm not talking about political memes here, chat. I'm talking about memes, period. Have you guys noticed that it's become harder and harder and harder to understand more current memes to normies? The more current a meme is, the harder it is to explain to a normie. Have you guys noticed that? Doge, or like Trollface, or Rage Comics, very easy to explain to a normie. How do you explain, like, Salmonussi? How do you explain the Salmonussi meme to a normie? You really can't, because the funniness of the meme, the funniness of the joke, is almost predicated on so many inside jokes and levels of ironic internet meta humor that you have to already be in on so many other jokes before then to get the newest one. Like if you went into a coma today and if I literally put all of you into a coma for a year and you woke up 1 year from today, first thing you did was open up Twitter and look at the most recent memes, none of you motherfuckers would be able to understand those memes, I bet. Because I'd be sure that at least some of those popular memes a year from now will be based off of events and references and memes that we won't understand until, a year has passed. And we've noticed as time goes by, internet humor and memes has become more and more self-referential and more hard to understand. Now, in the more apolitical meme sphere, it's led to things like the Salmonussi meme, or the Berussi meme, or like the deep fried memes type stuff, right? Like in some of its more innocent forms, it leads to that. However, in its more insidious forms, memes being a tool used by everybody on the internet, left, right, center, apolitical, and all, when right-wingers utilize memes, their memes, for their political motivations, just like we do for ours, well, we found that the right has taken a particularly strong stance against the concept of sincerity, against the concept of being real with somebody, being sincere. And it really is a little bit upsetting, because as irreverent and edgy and hilarious and dirty and disgusting as, classic
watch parties or no?
Sometimes. Thank you for that, Travis Pickle. When I look back at that old classic content, it was edgy, disgusting, shock humor, don't get me wrong, but it didn't feel hollow. It really didn't. Joji, the man, the myth, the legend behind the legend himself, Filthy Frank himself, wrote a book called Francis of the Filth. And in that book, he goes on to explain that the character of Filthy Frank was actually just meant to be the absolute worst person you could think of. Everything a human being should strive not to be is what Filthy Frank was. And what essentially ended up happening was a whole generation of young, edgy teens watched all that content without really getting the point. They didn't get the satire. They took the satire seriously. And now, years later, those that were like 15, 14, 13, 16 onward during those days, now we're adults. The people who were part of that generation are now adults. And a lot of the people part of that generation have escalated from just the irreverent, edgy, apolitical memes to full-on far-right memes, lacking any sincerity, with so many dog whistles and so many layers of meta-irony and meta-humor that you can't actually tackle the political talking points contained in the memes without looking like you're insane. That's the whole purpose of dog whistling. It's done on purpose. It's meant to. So, when of all people, iDubbbz's TV, one of the OG classic fucking edgelords of YouTube, one of the 3 OG kings, comes out with a video called Getting Away With It, in which he interviews notorious alt-right internet troll, who, by the way, donated like $5,000 to Stormfront, the neo-Nazi like news site. He went and did an interview with this guy, and named Sam Hyde. Sam Hyde is an alt-right fucking internet troll guy. He might not even be alt-right. The guy is so lacking in sincerity. I actually don't know if he just donated $5,000 to Stormfront because he actually just thinks it would make people mad, and he thinks making people mad is funny. I genuinely don't know if that's what his motivation is. The thing is, you can never tell. You can't tell if Sam Hyde is actually racist or not. You can't tell if Sam Hyde is, a good person or not, because when Sam Hyde expresses a decent non-obviously horrible opinion, he says it in the same way that he expresses a, horrible opinion that he expresses, right? So, it's all done so reverently and ironically that you really can't tell who the real human being behind the face of Sam Hyde actually is. You can't tell if there's a real human there. And so, iDubbbz did a whole documentary about this very concept, and it was fucking amazing. I watched the whole thing on stream, I think the day before yesterday. If you weren't here for it, really sorry you missed it. But this video has one point in it. One single point in it. It's just this one section of the video here that I think might be the best takedown of this sort of like irreverent, lacking in any sincerity, like right-wing edge humor that's become so popular online. And of all people to do a takedown on it, I'm glad it was iDubbbz, though I will admit it would have been nice had it happened in 2016. Because people thought a lot more positively of iDubbbz in 2016. A lot of the people in iDubbbz's audience, even though he's still massive and getting millions of subs and millions of views and everything, the people in iDubbbz's audience that I feel like may be susceptible to his messaging in this video have unfortunately left his community in large part as of late. For those of you guys who don't know, around a year ago, it came out that iDubbbz's girlfriend or wife or whatever would be doing like sex work, and he got shit from everybody on the internet for it. It feels like the whole community that he had fostered turned on him for it, and he made a video talking about it. A very good video. A very, very good video. And since then, his content has been a little bit different than what I think a lot of iDubbbz's viewers that may still be sitting around that could be receptive to this idea may have been sticking around to watch. His documentary content, which he's been putting out, a good amount more of lately, he has still been doing like the content he traditionally did, a little bit less edgy, doesn't say the N-word anymore, doesn't use slurs really from what I've seen. Regardless, he switched to making a lot different types of content than he previously did. It's not the same stuff as it was because he's grown, he's matured, he's found a passion for other things. The problem with that is, though, it's been seen as a betrayal. The combination of him being a simp and also him making content that isn't the super edgy, ridiculous content he made before has been viewed by his audience, a lot of his audience at least, as a betrayal, as an unironic betrayal. So a lot of the people, unfortunately, that were once subscribers to iDubbbz or viewers of iDubbbz that I would have liked to see this video, would have liked to see this segment and perhaps be spoken to by it, unfortunately, a lot less of them are going to be exposed to that messaging that I'm about to show you now than they might have been had this happened like a while ago. But regardless, can't change time. This is the segment I want to show you guys. It's a 3-minute segment, roughly. It's all I'm going to show of the video. And I'm not going to talk too much over it. I'm just going to let it play, and I'm going to give my thoughts after he talks. I think this is, unironically, the best explanation, and like just overall, just the best explanation of like why edgy humor can go too far sometimes on the internet. So let's watch. From none other than iDubbbz himself.
Hi. Before we continue with the documentary, I want to take a few minutes to talk about irony. I wish there was a perfect way to explain to you guys why talking to Sam Hyde is frustrating, not only to a person making a documentary about him, but as a guy who doesn't actually know Sam on a personal level. A lot of people probably refer to irony as having metaphorical layers, but irony exists in a circle. This is the circle of irony. At the top of the circle of irony, you have sincerity. You can't have any amount of irony without some sincerity behind it. Here's an example of a sincere thought. I don't like eating shit. People who are not being ironic say sincere things like that all the time. You might say that it's the default way to say things. The next rung on the circle of irony is just called irony. You might be familiar with this from English class, and it basically means that you kind of feel the opposite of what is being expressed. And it's basically just sarcasm. Oh yeah, I love eating shit. Great, people think I love eating shit now. Isn't that just perfect? This is the go-to boomer humor that old people thrive off of. They love sarcasm. It is a basic level of irony to the point where it's almost irrelevant to millennials and zoomers. After irony, we have post-irony. This is where you say something in a way that makes it sound like you don't mean it when you actually...
So this is where I think most of the internet is at now. And I'm fine with irony. Let me be honest with you guys. Like, I feel like most of the time, like 90% of the time here on stream, I'm here with you guys. I'm at sincerity, okay? Just being full on sincerity. Sometimes I get a little ironic. I like some irony. Irony's good. Post-irony is the really weird, layered stuff that like the internet's started to really perpetuate over the last like decade, I'd say, really. But most of the last half decade when memes have started to get a little bit more weird. Like, do you guys remember when memes started to get weird? Memes were always a little weird, but like memes were generally meant to be like a representation of like a common relatable emotion generally. But like DSP fapping on stream was post-ironic. I don't think that's how that works, unless he did it on purpose post-ironically, but though I don't think that was the case. The E meme is a perfect example of post-irony. How do you explain the E meme to somebody? There's so many layers of like internet irony you have to dig through just to get to post-irony, so it's impossible to explain. I think most of the internet is at post-irony right now. A lot of the right is also at post-irony, which is really hard to engage with. It's really hard to engage from a sincere position with post-irony. But post-irony I don't even think is that dangerous. My main concern is the final step of the circle, which is the full circle completion, which he's about to explain in a moment. This is the thing that I think Nick Fuentes does, what he's about to describe here, and that's the thing I've got a problem with. And you're about to see it.
Actually do mean it. In other words, you're using irony to make a joke about how you're joking. Oh, I don't like eating shit. Oh, me? Oh, no, I don't like eating shit. I hate that. I don't like eating shit. I don't like eating delicious, creamy shit. Stop saying that about me. If you put a pile of shit in front of me, I wouldn't devour it like an animal instantly. I wouldn't be doing that. This is probably the most popular form of irony in the modern generation.
It is, the E, draft crane.
They're basically parodies of memes. So you have to already know what irony is to appreciate or begin to appreciate post-ironic humor. And look, there's no more room on the circle, so we must be done. What the fuck is that? Meta-irony is where this gets fucked. This is where you're saying something sincere, but the context could imply that you're saying it ironically, yet the thing that you're saying is actually a sincere thought. If this doesn't make sense, that's because it doesn't make any sense. It's meant to confuse you. Meta-irony is placed intentionally in this circle in a way that doesn't make any sense because it is intertwined with sincerity. No, I don't like eating shit. No, I don't like eating shit. Unless. But do I like eating shit? You don't know, do you? The fact that I brought it up in the first place is a little bit suspicious, but the concept of eating shit is so ridiculous that I have to be serious when I say I don't want to. Right? Meta-irony is used.
So, the reason why I think that Nick Fuentes is like a master of meta-irony and why meta-irony I think is like the absolute like bottom of the fucking barrel. Like if you are at that Sam Hyde level of only being capable of engaging in meta irony, you're basically not a human being at this point. Like you just don't you can't actually communicate sincere thoughts through sincere messaging. You have to be all jokey and ironic and memey about what you truly believe. Generally, people who do this do it because they know the ideas they hold are generally not very well accepted, so they play a game of what's called Schrodinger's douchebag, where they pretend that something's a joke depending on the response they get, right? Like if they say something super edgy and problematic and everyone's offended by it in a way that, makes them kind of look bad, then they'll just say it's a joke. But if everyone gets offended by it in a way that makes them look bad, then they'll say, oh, see, the left is so triggered, right? And that's the whole purpose. It's meant to confuse and anger people who disagree with you. That's the whole point of meta-ironic humor being used to push political ideas. And the reason why this came up is because throughout this entire hour and 6-minute documentary, Sam Hyde several times just spreads like far right talking points, but then 5 minutes later says something progressive in the exact same way. You actually can't tell what Sam Hyde's political opinions are about. We can also apply this over to like Nick Fuentes. I can even use the exact same analogy that iDubbbz used here. So here's a good impression of Nick Fuentes, I think. Come on, guys. You all know Holocaust denial is bad, right? You all know that. All the numbers on how many people died in the Holocaust are completely accurate, right, chat? That's what Nick Fuentes will do. He does it all the fucking time. He did it for like 2 minutes following the famous cookie question clip, that the cookie analogy thing, right? Where he does just Holocaust denial but replaces Jews with cookies and Hitler with Cookie Monster, and then says, these are all just me. We believe in all the numbers, don't we here, chat? Don't we? And then he goes on to say that. Yeah, that's meta-irony. It's the point where you're expressing a sincere belief in a sarcastic way. So anybody who wants to deny holding that actual belief or deny that you hold that belief can easily just say you're being ironic and joking, when in reality, you're just expressing a sincere belief you hold in an ironic way. And that's what iDubbbz is explaining here, and I think it's fucking perfect. I've never heard a better explanation of it before than this video. It's very good.
Used effectively by people whose intention is to blur the line between sincerity and jokes. It creates a situation where in order for there to be a prerequisite of sincerity, I have to obtain the knowledge outside of the joke. You're basically just saying the consumption of shit is something that is physically possible. Isn't that interesting? I'm retarded. But if you're not saying anything about something when you say it, why do you even say it? People don't tend to do things for no reason. There has to be an answer here. And there are two answers. Either you're just bad at irony, or you're just being sincere. This is why it's so difficult to be around Sam. Try to understand him and ultimately make a documentary about him. He lives here. Sam is drenched in meta-irony constantly. He intentionally doesn't make it obvious when he is or isn't joking about something. Why he does this is up for interpretation, I guess, but after seeing how much he appears to involve himself in political ideologies, it seems he prefers to use meta-irony as a shield. To say, I was just joking, is a legitimate way to exonerate yourself in moments of actual miscommunication. But it's also a perfect fallback option for when you receive criticism for a point that you are genuinely trying to make. I think eating shit is awesome. What the fuck? You like eating shit? I was just kidding. Are you stupid or something? Well, now I feel bad for being unaware of any irony going on, so in the future, I will not criticize you for anything you say. I am now invulnerable to criticism.
A pretty damn perfect explanation of how certain actors online use meta-irony and ironic humor and ironic messaging and memes to push certain political ideologies when they try to make it seem like they're just joking. A very, very good takedown of modern-day online dog whistling. You really wouldn't expect somebody like iDubbbz, the guy who's famous for being half naked on the internet, shaved bald from his head to toes, saying he has cancer and eating hair cake and vomiting. You'd think that would be the last guy you'd expect to do an extremely well-done takedown on how ironic humor can be used to push political narratives, but it ended up being him. So it is what it is. No, but for real though, I fucking love iDubbbz, okay? I've been a fan of iDubbbz for as long as most people who've known of iDubbbz have been a fan of him. I discovered Filthy Frank back when he went by the name of Disaster Music on his old channel. And that was just sort of how I got into that whole edgy side of the internet. And I'm like, I still hold a lot of those same... My sense of humor is still very similar, you know? Like, if you're somebody watching this right now, if you stumbled across this video and you're like a fan of the old... Like, even if you're a fan of Sam Hyde, or if you're a fan of, like, the classic, like, iDubbbz, Max Mofo, Filthy Frank content, like that old OG, edgy, like, age of the internet stuff, I still like that kind of stuff. The problem is that I feel like it's kind of been, like, mutilated and sort of like what's a perfect word for it? I'm trying defiled. It feels like that type of humor has been defiled. The whole point of the type of humor that Filthy Frank and iDubbbz's did was meant to make fun of what they were doing. The joke was always them. When Filthy Frank went out in public dressed up as Pink Guy and was running around the street screaming and acting like he was having a seizure, he wasn't making a joke out of other people. That wasn't meant to make other people look bad. It's meant to make him look bad. It's him acting like an idiot in public. The joke is him. The joke of all these videos was always Filthy Frank. The joke was always iDubbbz's. The joke was always Max Mofo. And the joke was always, at the core, the sincere position that was always, always, always at the core of their comedy, it seems, was that they were making fun of the types of people who could engage in this type of behavior. That was the whole point. There was a crumb of sincerity at the core of it. And it was always, maybe not always, but at least in hindsight, if you look back at it now, it's quite visible. You can see it. I mean, you can see where even Joji wrote his book talking about his motivations making the character. It's not like this was a secret or something that you have to glean from the text or anything like that. The creators of the content themselves have talked about it. But more recently, this sort of edgy, ironic form of content, the edginess, I think, is unrelated. You'll notice that at no point in that entire thing did iDubbbz's really bring up edginess, because edginess is a very, very broad umbrella term, okay? Me saying I'm going to fuck your mom can be edgy. Also me saying the N-word can be edgy, okay? When I describe a streamer who is edgy, it could literally be describing either of those two things, depending on who you're talking to and what their definition or what their standard of edginess is. So I'm going to be a little careful with how I use edginess. I think the edginess, the inappropriate sort of taboo sense of this humor, which is still stuck around. I think that's the one aspect of the humor that's stuck around, is still there. That's the one thing that's stuck. The taboo, the offensiveness, right? The shock humor. That's what stuck around. The problem is, I always feel like the shock humor initially was meant to draw attention to the fact that the behavior being done was a joke, was like ridiculous. But now it feels like the shock humor is being used, well, by political pundits on the right to push politics. It's not jokes and memes anymore. It's not eating cake ingredients and vomiting it up and then saying the N-word because you think it's funny. Now it's actual political figures who have actual stake in the way that our country is run, actual political politicians who've been elected, pushing political memes and using this type of irony to radicalize a voter base or a supporter base, or even online public figures who have a large following of politically minded people are doing the same thing, radicalizing their audiences into more radical ideas through humor and memes. Because how do you normalize an idea? If you want to turn a normal person into a Nazi, mind you, no one's born a Nazi, chat. Nobody on Earth was ever born a Nazi. Okay, it's not how it works. Ideas like this are either acquired through upbringing or through direct propagandizing, okay? That's where it comes from. So if you take a normal person, someone who is not a Nazi, and you want to turn a normal person into a Nazi, well, that's a hard thing to do. It's not as easy as it sounds. Well, in practice it's easy, but it's easier than it sounds, sorry. It's easier in practice than it sounds. Lots of people love very, very taboo humor. Hypers in chat, if you like edgy taboo humor, and I mean edgy taboo humor that would get you canceled by the online left. Hypers in chat, if you consume any media on any regular basis that you think might get you canceled if it came out that you consume that type of humor media. Good example of this would be PKA. They say slurs on PKA. They say some things that I feel like if I showed a full episode of PK on here, I'm sure there'd be a few things that you guys would get triggered about if you saw it. But as a left-wing figure, I still recognize that even when I disagree with someone politically, I can still criticize their political views. I can still enjoy their content and their humor, while also recognizing what they truly believe and where I disagree with them, right? PKA obviously is not like a far-right podcast or anything, but I mean, they're just a bunch of gamer dudes, right? They have some shitty political opinions, right? And sometimes you're watching a little PKA, playing a little Tarkov, and something that doesn't sit right with you gets said, and you're like, damn, I wish I was in that call right now. But you recognize you're allowed to enjoy content. I'm allowed to enjoy content that perhaps is a little bit problematic. I just think that it's worth encouraging in people to be a little bit more self-reflective about what they consume, right? Like, some of my favorite shit to do now is to watch a TV show or a movie, then get in like a nice hot shower, and then like in my head write the script to an imaginary like review of that movie or media that I would make, right? I actually have been thinking about making a video about The Boys, the politics of the show The Boys. Really good show on Amazon Video about it's just a good show. I thought about making a video about the politics of The Boys and how it's really good. And I don't know, I find a lot of meaning. I find a lot of enjoyment in whatever media I enjoy, analyzing the fuck out of it, finding its flaws and finding where it's good. I really enjoy that kind of stuff. And what I encourage in anybody who may watch this video, if you are not like a left-wing political person, if you're just some random iDubbbz's fan even who stumbled across this video and you're like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? All I ask, really, is that if you're consuming a certain type of content, whether it be YouTube content or mainstream media content, or video games or comics or anything like that, or books even, if you like reading, I don't know. Something I encourage a lot is analyzing what you think about the author motivated the author to write the story in a certain way. This doesn't mean that you have to cancel the author, right? Like, J.K. Rowling's getting canceled pretty hard right now, okay? You can still like Harry Potter, and that's fine, okay? We got any Harry Potter fans still in chat? Anyone here in the chat still a Harry Potter fan? I imagine many of you who were probably stopped being Harry Potter fans when you found out what J.K. Rowling was like, but I mean, some of you surely, right? Yeah, there's still a few Harry Potter fans in the chat. See, yeah. So you can enjoy media even from a figure who you take massive political disagreement with and still enjoy it. Though I do think that it's unhealthy to try and use irony and humor and plausible deniability as a broad shield against all criticism. Isn't Notch a Nazi? He is unironically a Nazi. He's actually like come out and said that like the Jews control the world and stuff on Twitter. Like, he is not, Notch sadly is a Nazi. But that's a whole other thing. Like, Notch doesn't dog whistle, okay? Notch just went on Twitter and said the Jews control everything. He didn't even dog whistle. The type of messaging Notch engaged in was very different even than the type of messaging that J.K. Rowling engages in. With all of that said, all I encourage is that if you enjoy a certain type of media, look at it a little bit more critically. You don't have to stop watching it. You don't even have to hate it or criticize it even. But I do recommend looking at media critically. Not even like politically, actually. Just on a general level, critically analyzing media is really important, okay? Critically analyzing media was something I never really did prior to becoming a YouTuber, okay? Or actually watching media critique content on YouTube. Before like that, I watched a movie, and if it entertained me, I like it. And if it didn't entertain me, I didn't like it. Now, though, I watch watch media, and I get so much more out of it. I get more messaging out of it. I learn more about like what the writers or the writer might have felt about it. It's an important thing to do. And if you're a political actor out there and you are a fellow person who is concerned about like the prevalence of the rising far right in America, then it is important to recognize where political ideologies, left and right, including the right, use memes and meta irony to push their political propaganda with a shield from criticism. It's a real problem. And that's all I ask.